check, mic check, 1 2 1 2. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another one of them candid conversation. I hope you're in your high spirits. I hope everything is going okay. This one is a nice one. This one is one of my favorite subjects I like, and I'm really excited about this one. Before we go any further, a big shout out to all our sponsors, our well-wishers. A big shout out to OWF, Olympia Wafula Foundations, for the nice things you're doing out there in the community. A big shout out to our city lookout out there in Diani. You know, it's opening up. You can take your family and all that. Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. You're doing good things. A big shout out to Bush and Wine Adventures. You know, we're touring now and things are opening up. You can come visit Kenya, come visit South Africa. And a big shout out to Win. What is normal? Yeah, nephew, you're doing your thing. Last but not least, a big shout out to Trigger Accountants. They're the ones who keep the lights on. We got Shari on the block, Shari playing on the background, Shari Africa. We're gonna get to that. Now, we're gonna talk about mental health in men. And with me are two gentlemen who are well versed in this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mr. Titus Tito Mulama from Hurricanes Academy in Nairobi. Most of you know Tito. You know his works in the mid when Harambee Stars, Madara United and all that. Welcome, Mr. Titus. And with us today is Mr. Mark Flemming from Sports Chaplain UK. Welcome, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Jumbo.
See, yeah, right in there. Listen, guys, being that I'm a DJ, we're gonna start with this one here. This is Shari Africa. By the way, what are you listening to at the moment? I'd like to know that. What are you listening to at the moment, Mr. Mark? What kind of music?
My music is really conscious roots reggae. That's my jam. I just love reggae music. So I love old school reggae, Bob Marley, Burning Spear, Twinkle Brothers.
Okay.
I like the new school stuff, Protege, Chronics. So I just love reggae.
Right. What about you, Tito? What are you listening to at the moment?
Man, I'm a big reggae fan. Conscious lyrics, anytime. Give me Anthony B, give me Luciano, anytime.
All right.
Raging Fire.
Yes. I appreciate you, gentlemen. Mark is surprising me already. Listen, this is Shari Africa from Nairobi, Kenya, right? One of the upcoming, very nice vocalists. Add her on your playlist, okay? On your Spotify list, go check out Shari Africa. She's doing big things and we'll be hearing a lot about Shari Africa. This one is called Your Name. Okay. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Our topic today is mental health, right? Before you came in, Tito, I was talking to Mark and we were just like touching base and all that. We realized the first thing I wanna, like, we all know mental health is there, but the understanding and the perception is kind of different, right? So to open us the conversation, Mark, you were telling us about, you were talking to me about the difference or the perception between the Western and the East Africa to be precise. Being that you worked in Africa for a while, can you just bring us to what your take is on the issue?
Sure. I think, first of all, I'll speak from a Western perspective and say that we have a very cerebral understanding of mental health, but the very phrase mental health very often carries negative connotations. So if I'm in a group of people and I ask, tell me words that you automatically associate with physical health. They'll say words like exercise, diet, all these, strength, stamina. So they use positive words. They use words that speak of being proactive in order to be physically well. But if I use the phrase mental health, they usually say things like depression, anxiety, sadness, breakdown. And so very often when the phrase mental health is used, it's used in a negative way, and in terms of when mental health has gone wrong. And that is because people get mixed up between mental health and mental illness. So mental health is not mental illness. And yet very often when we use the phrase mental health, that's what we're thinking of. So I think that's the first thing we need to really clarify. So I tend to talk more in the training that I deliver in this area. I talk more about brain health.
Okay.
Because if we look after our brains and with exercise, good nutrition, good sleep hygiene, and various other things, if we look after our brains, then actually we'll have good mental health, Right. So what I find in the West is that our understanding of mental health is not that great. It's not really that great, but it also dismisses the spiritual dynamics within mental health as well.
Okay.
So for example, somebody may suffer demonic oppression, and what will happen is that will be interpreted as a mental illness. Now, if somebody's experiencing a demonic oppression, no amount of medication, counselling and therapy is going to sort that. They need spiritual help and deliverance.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, when I've worked in Africa, in some parts of Africa, there isn't even a word that translates as mental illness. And so therefore, things are only seen as whether it's a physical problem or a spiritual problem. And so therefore, somebody may indeed have a clinical depression, an anxiety disorder, a psychotic illness. And if that is treated with spiritual means, and the root is not spiritual, but it's actually to do with the brain, then the danger is it can do more harm than good. So I think we need a combination of both. We need to understand we're body, soul, and spirit. And that mental health is our psychological well-being. It's around how we're thinking and feeling and behaving, but we cannot dismiss the spiritual dynamic.
Right. Oh, thank you. Mr. Titus, you being a footballer, right? I'm sure, like, basically being men, right? Being a footballer and going through your career, right? And then mostly during the transition is when you feel like you're switching off from what you call it, a situation where you're programmed and you know what to do, and there's high adrenaline, to now where you're not going out training, there are no games, there's nothing to do, and it also reflects back to maybe even the financial side, right? And that's basically where I'd like for you to talk to us about, like, being a footballer and the transition. How did it, what's your take about it?
Yeah, well, I will just highlight from Africa or Kenya perspective to narrow it down, because really having to transit from playing actively, participating in football or the competitions, to now living where you're not programmed, you have to do other things, think about other stuff, many stuff. But just to add on to what the other guest was saying, Mr. Mark, is that even in sports, this depression, or not depression, but mental wellness, it is something that should be detected and should be controlled, because we see it week in, week out, because of the anxieties that are there, that are associated with the sports, and the expectations and the uncertainties that players go through. But just to touch on what you just asked, it is very difficult. It has been a challenge for Kenyan players, for Kenyan athletes, sportsmen and women to make that transition because of lack of preparedness. We need a mechanism whereby players or active sportsmen are prepared well in advance of the reality, which is that you have to exit the stage at some point. Well, this is what is lacking, and it comes as a surprise and as a rude shock to many of us. And this is where now we land into many problems with our psychology.
All right, Mr. Mark, that's a familiar territory for you, right? Being that you've been in Africa and you're well versed in sports and all that, and you help them in that situation. What can you add on what Titus has just told us?
Yeah, I totally agree with Titus. It's the same in the UK. It's the same in Rwanda. I think when you lose your sense of purpose, your sense of identity, your sense of significance, your sense of value, your sense of worth, and all these things are very much a part of what it is to be a professional sports person. And so when that is taken away from you and you've nothing to replace it with, sometimes you lose your sense of self, and it can have a devastating impact upon your mental well-being. And so we would find that here as well. And this is where, it's important, I think, when you're involved within the world of sports. So I'm the chaplain to the Scottish Football Association, and also the trainer in mental health for our professional football leagues. And one of the things I tried to get across is to help players understand their identity as being more than simply footballers, and to understand that there is more to life than football. There is more to them than being a footballer, and to help them realise that that life exists outside football and prepare them for that, because that's very, very important. I think because footballers, let's say, are so focused on their career, so focused on the next game, so focused on next season, it's very hard for them to think beyond that. And so when the career comes to an end through injury or retirement, like nothing's prepared them for it, and it's almost like they've jumped off a cliff and they're in free fall. They don't know what to do. So I do think we have a responsibility in preparing people for life after football.
So they are like, let's talk hypothetically, like a footballer or a sports person, footballer in this case, right? Who's going through this, right? What are the signs? What are the red flags? Maybe in a case, have you, to you, Tito, did you ever, while you were playing, did you ever at some time, maybe you're recovering from injury, or maybe you're having a bad thingy, or you being dropped from the team? Does this make you stronger if you come through it, or is it one of the red flags that kind of like, okay, maybe here I need to do something about it?
Yeah, well, it has happened to me. There was a time that I was suspended by the federation. I got a 6 months ban. I was not allowed to train with my club. I was not allowed to play for the national team or play in the league. And then it served as a motivation to me. Not really. It depends on how you take it, because it can break you down or build you, make you stronger. So to me, it was a motivation and an eye opener that you won't be playing football all your life. At some point, you will have to exit the stage. At some point, you won't be any more useful to the club or to your country. You have to be prepared for that. And after the ban, I played, yes, but at the back of my mind, I was preparing myself slowly to exit the floor, because things could turn around at any time. Came to my course of retirement. I retired through injury, but then not only through injury, but then my contract was cut short. I had a 24-month contract. It was cut short after 4 months. Wow. So you can imagine, if you're not strong, what that could do to you.
Yeah.
At some point, for the next like 9 months, it was really, really, really tough for me, because I had all this focus to play the league, to play the season, get to the national team, help the country, but then it was cut short just 4 months into the contract. Yeah, so yes, you can see the red flags, but then it just depends on how you take it, what lessons you learn from each experience. Yeah, it just depends on you. But most importantly is that we should accept that reality at the beginning of our careers. And maybe, yes, we cannot realize it ourselves. We need support also from our clubs, from our associations, from whoever we associate with, to realize that at one point this must come to an end.
Thank you for sharing. And I think this is the important thing at this particular time. Like, a question that comes to mind is, what is being done? Are there structures? Maybe Mark, are there structures? What is being done to prepare players, like as Titus has said, at the beginning of your career, you to prepare them mentally. Maybe this is what Mark was saying. You prepare them mentally early, right, to know that you're more than football. You're a human being, and you're a person, and all those type of things. So what happens when Mark, you might help here, when those structures, two questions, right? So when the structures are there, or maybe the machinery is there and the involvement is there, but the individual is not recognizing this, or maybe they think they're, no, that's not for me, I'll see myself through. That's question number two, right? That's question number one, if the individual is like not partaking or maybe downplaying it. How do you go about it, Mark, in a case like that?
Yeah. So there is definitely a challenge sometimes, particularly with younger players, because younger players tend to only think in the moment. They don't think future. And it's simply because your brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. Now, because of that, the parts of your brain that are the most dominant up until that stage tend to deal with the moment. They tend not to be, thinking of the future. So it's a brain development thing, it's a maturity thing. So yeah, we will explain to young players, you need to understand this career is short. It could be shorter still through injury or, through just being released. And yet somehow they're so focused on the moment of being a successful footballer, they don't take that on board. So there is that challenge. But one of the things we help them do, and this is what I do in the training that I deliver, we help them understand what actually is going on within their brains when they're experiencing injury, when they're experiencing being left out of the squad, or when they're being released, or the various other challenges that we find. So if I can just briefly explain, within our brain, we have what's called neurotransmitters, or happy brain chemicals. And we need these brain chemicals to be increased and released on a steady basis in order for us to have good mental health. So let me explain very simply, very briefly, a few of them. One of them is called dopamine. And dopamine is your motivational molecule. It's a motivational brain chemical. So that when you feel you're about to achieve a reward, or you're about to reach a goal, or you're anticipating something you're looking forward to, and you're motivated towards something, that comes from dopamine. Now, if you are injured, or if you are released, your dopamine levels are reduced because you have nothing to look forward to. And so we need to understand this is what's happening within the brain. Can we compensate for that in some way? Can we give them something else to look forward to, something else for them to be motivated towards? Another brain chemical is called serotonin, which I refer to as your happy hormone. And it's when that is released, there's a feeling of value, significance, worth, well-being, peace. That's why it's called your happy hormone. If you're injured, or you're released from a club, or your career comes to an end, and you lose that sense of value, significance, and purpose, and worth, that can really diminish levels of serotonin and can lead to depression and anxiety. Therefore, can we help them find their identity in something else? Can we help them understand that they have a purpose beyond football? You know, can we help them discover their significance out with professional sport? You know, these are the ways that we would try and help them in that transition. Another brain chemical is called oxytocin, and this is a chemical of connection. So when you feel connected to somebody or connected to a larger group, and the feel-good factor that comes from that, that leads to bursts of oxytocin, which is a really good brain chemical. Now you imagine then if you're injured and you're, you know, in isolation training, or you're suspended and you're not able to play with your team, or you're released from your team and you're put out on loan, or you're in many different scenarios where you lose that sense of belonging to the football club, how that will diminish oxytocin levels. So can we help that player feel a part of the club even when he is not playing? Can we give them another role within the club? Can we somehow make them feel a part of things, so that they don't feel completely isolated and cut off? Because those are the three things that really tend to adversely affect a footballer's mental health, is a diminishing of these particular brain chemicals.
All right, these three brain chemicals. Can you hear me? Sorry about
yes.
that. These three brain chemicals. So if it's dopamine or whatever, if it comes down based on the occurrence, then the player becomes, you know, doesn't
demotivated, and
the motivation goes down and everything. So you're speaking. That's what happens. What about what your experience in Africa is? Is there structures within teams that you've that for this to happen? Like Titus, you can chip in here. Within Africa, I'm not sure teams do this. Do they?
There are some teams that are really trying. For example, in APR, where I was playing in Rwanda, we had several players who were attached to the youth or development of young players of the club. So the older players, as you on your way out, you're assigned duties to the younger ones. But in other countries, no, there is no mechanism, there's no system to allow this soft transition. Wow. So you're completely cut off, and that's it. You know, and as you play, as you age, or during your time in the teams, in the national team, you know, in an ideal situation, you would be exposed to psychologists, sports psychologists, guys who will mentor you, like even your financial managers. Right, you know, yeah. so you can be enlightened on one or two things, because as we all know, you cannot play for forever. So this is what is lacking. So to answer you, there are some teams that are, especially the top clubs, that are really trying. But 98% of the clubs, no, they don't. There is nothing. It's you to find whatever you want to do in life after football. It's you you stand by yourself.
Yeah, you're left on your own to work it out.
You do it throughout the career. From when you start playing, maybe you start playing professional football at 18 or 20. You have to find whatever you want to do after football by yourself. Which can be really, really challenging. As Mark said, you are totally focused. You go for training in the morning. Maybe sometimes you train 3 times or twice. You really, your mind is fixed on training and the next match and getting a position in the team and getting the allowances, progressing for a better contract. You cannot, if you don't have someone or a team that works well off the pitch with you, then you're in problems.
Yeah, true that. Mark, with your experience, especially in Africa, just the whole the stigma now. I want us to talk about the stigma, right? Because it exists and it affects us daily, right? Off the pitch, on the pitch, and through whatever. What have you experienced on the ground working in Africa, Mark, that you think is a positive, is a way forward? And what are some of the things that you think can be done just to kind of make it palatable, like to tackle the stigma?
Yeah, I think in Rwanda that there has been a developing of understanding around psychological well-being, and much of that has come from the country's recovery from the genocide.
Oh.
You know, because trauma featured very heavily within the country's DNA. You know, as you would understand, 1 million people murdered within 100 days. How does a country recover from that? And so because of what the country has come through and is coming through, how they've recognized the impact of trauma, I think that's given them an advantage in terms of understanding the reality of mental health challenges. And they've been very open to receiving a lot of support and understanding. And I would say, in my experience in Rwanda, there is a good understanding of what leads to good mental health. So that's been helpful in that regard. But I do think that historically, mental illness has been seen as a weakness of character, which you would not say of somebody.
Thank you for saying that.
You would not say that of somebody who's broken their leg. You wouldn't say, oh, he has a weak leg, that's why it broke. He had a bad tackle, that's why it broke. And so we need to understand that if somebody has a mental health injury, it's not because they have a weak character, it's simply because certain neurotransmitters were not, they were not firing on all 4 cylinders. There was certain parts of the brain that were overactive, underactive. There was perhaps inflammation in the brain. There was perhaps a head injury, because all these things can cause what we would now understand as mental illness. So I think there's a greater understanding of what can cause a mental illness, so that there's not the same stigma attached to it. And for me, I don't see mental illness as any different to physical illness. Physical illness is as a result of things like injury, inflammation, infection. These things all cause physical illness. These things can all cause mental illness as well. It's just because you can't see it, because it's all to do with activity within the brain. So I think there's a greater understanding of what's actually going on for somebody who's experiencing a mental illness, that it's not just that they are weak, insipid, poor character, but actually there are issues within the brain that can be resolved and that can be healed.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Thank you for enlightening us with that. I gotta say this something, gentlemen. The time is running out, yeah? Oh dear. But this is such a lovely conversation. I got like 8 minutes, right? Can I ask you 2 gentlemen, can we do this again, please? Is that too much to ask? Can we send you maybe? No.
It's great. It's great, man. It's great to learn from Flemming, a practicing individual, and great insights, which can go a long way to helping developing or players who are active at the moment, or those who are planning on exit. These are great one, man. At any time.